The energy in Ponyville was palpable on the morning of Hearts and Hooves Day. It was one of the most beloved holidays of the year for pony residents, and each couple busily prepared themselves to convey their affections to their special sun pony in some meaningful way. Ponies of all ages bustled about the streets, giving little cards and candies to those who meant the most to them. And with careful planning and consideration, a particular pink party pony made sure to spread the love of the holiday to each and every pony in town. Every pony in Ponyville was enjoying some form of the festivities, with the exception of one honest farm pony. At Sweet Apple Acres, the apple family trees were just beginning to bloom again with life. Their branches were adorned with blossoms that would soon bear the fruit of the family's livelihood. Most spring mornings you could find Applejack and her older brother Big Macintosh busily working to fix up the farm and breathe it back to life after having a long and taxing winter. This day, however, Big Mac had been pulled into the heart of Ponyville by his not-so-secret special sun pony friend Miss Cheerily. Even though the love poison of the previous year had long since worn off, Applejack could tell that the sparks between them had never extinguished. She thought perhaps the Cutie Crusaders had indeed done something right for a change by bringing the two of them together. At the very least, she could see that it made her big brother happy. Winter had taken its toll on the Apple family farm that year, and the day's project was fixing up the side of the old chicken coop. Applejack had all the tools and materials she needed laid out for her, while the chickens wandered aimlessly around their pen, undeterred by her work. She wasted no time getting the project underway, paying no heed to the holiday. Applejack wiped away a bead of sweat from her brow as she hammered a board in place.
"What in tarnation?"
she exclaimed, dropping the hammer in surprise directly on her hoof. She cried out in shock and cradled her hoof to her side for a moment before turning her head to the sky.
"What said that?"
After a long moment of silence, she warily returned to the task at hoof.
"There it is again!"
Applejack whirled around, looking for the source of the sound she was hearing, but found no pony in sight.
"Cut that out! Show yourself!"
After another long moment of silence, Applejack shook her head, attributing her delusion to working too hard, and made a mental promise to go a little easy on the cider drinking.
"Now, how in the hay did you know that? And who are you? Don't you pretend like you can't hear me."
Applejack backed away from the chicken coop rather abruptly, causing a little commotion among the chickens. The startled fowl began flapping and running about aimlessly while Applejack tried her best to contain them. She carefully backed out of the pen and locked the gate behind her, narrowly avoiding a good and frightened peck to the face.
"Pinkie Pie?
Applejack said, spitting out a mouthful of chicken feathers.
Is this some sort of prank for not coming to your Hearts and Hooves Day breakfast extravaganza? I told you I'd be there for the party tonight, but a working mayor's got chores to do, no matter what day it is. I ain't got time for this nonsense. If I'm going to spend the night partying at Pinkie's, there's a list of chores that's just gotta get done."
Applejack decided to leave the chicken coop repair for a little later when the chickens had calmed themselves down. She reached for the harness of the plow before pausing and looking up to the sky again. She growled and retracted her hoof, reaching instead for a spare wheel to fix the one on the broken cart. She decided to wait until her brother could help with the plowing and figured her time would be better spent repairing the cart.
"How the hay are you doing that? I haven't even said a gosh darn word, you big old voice in the sky,"
she exclaimed, shaking her hoof in the direction of the clouds.
"Cut it out,"
she said, stamping her hooves on the ground in frustration. As she did so, she accidentally knocked one of the shelves resting on the barn wall into a pile of junk, sending it scattering about the floor.
"Now look what y'all done made me do."
She grumbled, and with a sigh, she began to clean up the little mess. Applejack paused when she caught sight of a white sequined basket. She recognized it from the day that Rarity had tried impressing Trenderhoof with her simple ways on the farm. Applejack smiled, and even managed a short chuckle at the memory.
"That was a funny one, wasn't it? And to think that Trinder pony wanted to stick around the farm just 'cause of me. I'd go plumb crazy having some pony following me around like that. Hint, hint,"
she said, her eyes narrowed as she looked up again. After another moment of silence, she gave up with a sigh. Perhaps it wasn't coincidence that she found that basket today, and she found her thoughts were lingering on her gorgeous friend as she finished organizing the mess she created.
I wouldn't have made this mess if y'all would have kept your mouth shut. And what do you mean it ain't coincidence? Rarity left it here on accident. I don't see how that's important. It ain't like she's asked for it back.
Still, the thought of visiting her friend was nagging at the back of her head, and making her antsier by the minute. Applejack began to wonder what she would be doing for Hearts and Hooves Day. She knew Rarity had plenty of crushes in the past, including Prince Blueblood, Fancy Pants, and of course Trenderhoof. She wondered which new stallion has stolen her attention this year.
Probably another one of them high society types. She's always been into that sort of thing.
Applejack couldn't deny the feeling of jealousy when she thought of all the colts that could potentially snag Rarity's attention.
Whoa there. Jealousy? Why would I be jealous?
Applejack has always admired Rarity for her elegance and generous spirit. It was rare indeed to find a pony with such refined tastes who could act so giving to those around her.
That's why she's the element of generosity, of course. And it ain't just to friends, neither. I've seen Rarity generous to perfect strangers on the street. No pony more deserving than she is.
Applejack's thoughts began to drift again, as she recalled the time she and Rarity had spent together. She wondered how it was possible for two ponies to be so different and yet still remain such good friends. Applejack didn't understand high society or fashion, but she was always glad to delight in the achievements and interests of her friend. Spending time with Rarity was a highlight for Applejack, and her heart skipped a beat at the prospect of getting to do it again.
Of course I like spending time with my Wait, what was that last part?
No matter how Applejack rationalized it, she knew there was a reason she avoided Ponyville today.
Oh, really? And what is that, pray tell?
She wasn't sure how much time she could spend around Rarity on the most romantic of holidays without letting her true feelings be known.
True feelings?
Still, something in the back of her mind told her today would be the best day to finally let her heart be known. She would march right up to Rarity and tell her what she thought of her.
Hey, Mr. Voice in the Sky, I didn't mean to upset you none. Don't go doing something foolish now.
She would explain the depth of the respect and admiration she had for her, and not just for her generous spirit, but for the goodness and beauty of her heart.
I don't like where this is going.
Today would be the day that Applejack would tell Rarity that she loved her, and seal the declaration with a kiss.
What are you talking about? I don't love Rarity.
Applejack wandered over to a barrel of water and tried her best to smooth her mane and her hooves, fighting against the butterflies forming in her stomach at the idea of her lips pressed against Rarity's.
I would think no such thing. You did this. You put these thoughts here.
Her heart was racing, but her mind was set. She wouldn't let another Hearts and Hooves Day pass without letting Rarity know how she felt. She carefully positioned her iconic hat on her head and wiped the mud and dirt from her hooves.
How are you doing that? Stop. I am not in love with Rarity. Do you hear me?
With a nervous sigh, Applejack took the little basket in her hoof and started for Rarity's. Giving it back to her would provide a good excuse for coming over in the first place. She locked the barn door and began the trek to Carousel Boutique.
Hey now, let's talk about this. I am not in love with Rarity, okay? You need to take all that back and leave me alone, you hear? I've got chores to do. I can't play into all this nonsense. Voice? Voice? Why can't I stop walking? Consarn it!
Rarity let out a quiet sigh as another pony couple exited her boutique. Hearts and Hooves Day was a wonderful day for business as all the stallions in Ponyville scrambled to find the perfect gift for their special sun pony. Rarity offered an assortment of fine designs that were sure to bring a smile to any pony's face, each of them themed by the holiday in reds, whites, and pinks. Still, there was a part of her saddened by each sale as she got to witness the happiness that she herself didn't possess. For years now, it seemed that Rarity had always sought after the prize she could never attain. Somehow, there was always something to block her heart from finding that certain sun pony who would return her affection. Rarity shook her head, determined not to let sadness poison her holiday, and instead decided to tidy up a bit around the shop. Using her magic, she put the unsold designs back on display and smoothed the fabric of one of the dresses with her hoof. This particular dress had something of a backstory to it, and she was secretly pleased it hadn't sold yet. When Twilight's magic had switched every pony's cutie marks, Applejack had attempted to make a gown, and the end result was something far less than desirable. When Rarity reclaimed her boutique, she found the gown tossed into the corner. She had the thought to throw it out immediately, but something about the dress stuck with her. Instead, she kept the gown and worked some of her own magic and creativity into the design. Even though Applejack had her cutie mark at the time, she could still see traces of her friend's personality in the fabric and color choices. She knew she could never hope to get her to wear a dress this formal, but it was something of a secret side project to get finished. She wondered if Applejack saw it now she would recognize it. Rarity had noticed the increased amount of thought she gave to Applejack lately, and wondered if it was the hype of the holiday that had gotten into her. She never would have guessed that a farm pony like her could have caused her so much admiration and respect. Though it was true that the pair of them had somewhat of a checkered past, she knew she could count on Applejack to be there for her when she needed her the most. In fact, it was the thought of Applejack that kept her from being completely miserable for Hearts and Hooves Day, and as strange as it seemed, those thoughts were starting to turn into something else. It had taken Rarity years to appreciate farm living, but now that she understood it and the genuine nature of Applejack, she found she was drawn to it. Living only to please high society ponies was a rather exhausting thought. She knew she could be herself around Applejack, and feel as though she was the most cultured pony without having to prove it. Rarity was startled by the ringing of her shop bell, and quickly dropped the gown from her hooves, fighting a blush that would reveal too much about that particular train of thought. When she saw Applejack, however, her eyes lit up, and a delightful cheeriness returned to her voice.
Applejack, I didn't expect to see you until tonight.
Applejack was out of breath. She put a hoof to her chest and rolled her eyes up to the ceiling with a little grumble. Rarity furrowed her brow and looked up to see what she could have been looking at.
Don't you hear it?
Applejack exclaimed, growling again at what appeared to be nothing.
I don't understand, Applejack. Are you all right? You look a little flustered. That's one way of putting it. Look, Rarity, I don't know how to explain it, but something really strange is going on today, and One moment, darling. I hear the kettle calling. Back in a moment. Be a dear and keep an eye on the shop for me, would you?
Rarity sang as she trotted towards the kitchen. Applejack finally took a moment to catch her breath. She had been painstakingly walking to the boutique and making every hoof step far more difficult than it needed to be. As she passed other shops and carts, she attempted to clasp onto them with no avail. Eventually, she would have to release her grip on them and walk closer to her destination.
That's because you put some kind of hex on me, and I know it. Look, what'll it take for you to leave me alone already? I have no intention of kissing any pony, let alone one of my best friends. Did you say something, Applejack?
Rarity asked, returning with a silver tray and an assortment of goodies.
Nothing.
Applejack amended quickly before gratefully accepting a pastry. Rarity set down the little tray and poured herself and Applejack some tea before she noticed the little white basket still held in Applejack's hoof.
Is that what I think it is? This? Why, yes, it is. And that's why I'm here. The only reason I'm here. I found this here basket in the barn, and I thought I'd drop it by. It, completes that outfit of yours.
Applejack said, narrowing her eyes at the ceiling again.
I would hardly call that an outfit, darling. More like a drastic disaster. I got rid of it ages ago. I hadn't realized the basket was still in your barn. So sorry you had to come all this way.
Rarity said, feeling a little dejected having learned the reason for Applejack's visit.
Dejected? Beg pardon?
Rarity asked curiously before taking another sip of tea.
Do you really not hear?
Applejack started, then gave up with a little sigh.
I'm always happy to come and visit a friend, even if there are chores to be done. Certainly not on a holiday. Even I'm beginning to wonder if I should close up shop and join the festivities. That is, if I had some pony to go with.
Rarity replied, hinting at how she wanted Applejack to respond.
Wait, before we talk about that, I have a question.
Applejack said, trying her best to ignore whatever it was that was bothering her.
Have you been having strange thoughts lately? Strange thoughts? You know, strange thoughts about a certain pony that might not seem all that natural. As if some pony put 'em there without you knowing it. I'm afraid I don't know what you mean, darling. Look, I get the feeling I should probably be heading out before something... I should probably get back to my chores. Thanks for the tea and cakes, though. They were mighty tasty.
Applejack said with a nervous grin, eyeing the door longingly. Before she had a chance to leave, however, something caught her eye. It was the gown that Rarity had been toying with when she first entered the shop. She recognized it.
I do? Did you say something, dear?
Rarity said, trying to hide the disappointment in her voice.
This here dress. Isn't this...
Applejack trailed off, the pieces finally coming together in her mind.
Why yes it is. It's that gown you had started when we had our little cutie mark mix-up. You kept it? All it needed was a bit more designing and some adjustments. I think it turned out lovely, don't you?
Applejack looked from Rarity to the gown, and back again. Her heart picked up a little bit as the thought began to form that perhaps there was something more to what Rarity felt for her, too. She was touched that her friend would take the time to mend the gown that she had butchered, and it only fueled the flame burning inside her.
Would you cut that out?
Applejack hissed under her breath.
Yes, Rarity, it's lovely. I'm flattered you gave it a second try, but like I said, I should... You know, Applejack, it's rather fortuitous that you're here. I feel there's something I need to get off my chest.
Applejack froze in place, her mind racing to match the pace of her heart.
Oh?
She said, unsure how to respond.
I've been thinking of some pony lately, and I must admit, these thoughts are both surprised and delighted me.
Applejack sat down slowly, fearing the worst.
It seems to me that all of my time and energy is spent frittered away on ponies who don't deserve it. I'm tired of having to prove myself to others as a designer or a sophisticated party guest. I feel perhaps I've been looking in all the wrong places for a home for my heart. Maybe I've been overlooking the best place for it all along. Rarity.
Applejack started, beads of sweat forming on her brow.
You don't need to say another word. I know exactly what you mean.
Rarity looked over to Applejack with a relieved and delighted grin. Applejack's eyes widened as she shook her head.
No, that ain't what I was trying to say. What I mean is, you've been on my mind too.
Rarity's smile widened.
No, I mean, I didn't do it on purpose. Don't you find this a bit... isn't this going a tad too fast? It don't even make sense. Love rarely does, Applejack.
Rarity said, walking closer to her friend.
Love? Rarity,
Applejack's brow was covered with sweat, and her eyes darted back and forth, looking for all the exits. She knew what Rarity was after, and her heart was pounding in anticipation. She also knew that it wouldn't stop until she finally conceded and let her emotions out.
I love you, Applejack.
Applejack fought back both a smile and a growl. She gritted her teeth and dug her hooves into the ground before finally shouting,
Pony feathers!
And closing the distance between herself and Rarity with a kiss.
That was nice. Wait, do you hear that? Hear what? Nothing, he's gone, he's finally gone. Yeehaw! Who's finally gone, Applejack dear? No pony at all. I think we did it. Now I can finally have some peace. I know what you mean, though it'll be interesting to tell our friends about us. Being an item now. Say what? You know, you and I together.
Applejack's heart stopped as the realization hit her. There was no turning it off. She and Rarity were destined to be No matter how she fought against it, she would learn that fate knew better when it came to lonely hearts.
But he said it would stop, and then No!
Twilight, what are you doing up here?
Spike asked the pony princess, who was busily writing away at a certain scroll with a smug little grin on her face.
Oh, Spike, I didn't hear you coming.
She said, rolling it up quickly and hiding it behind her back.
Isn't that the enchanted scroll that Celestia gave you last week?
Spike asked, raising his eyebrows suspiciously.
Why, yes. Yes, it is, Spike.
Twilight said, making sure to put it out of reach before he could take a look at its contents.
Well, aren't you gonna come to Pinky's Hearts and Hooves Day party?
Oh, of course. Let me just finish tidying up here and I'll be down to join you.
Twilight said with a nervous smile. Spike shrugged and hurried away to rejoin the fun. Twilight waited until he was completely out of sight before she brought the scroll back down and dipped her quill in ink one last time to write the final passage.
I love you too, Rarity, Applejack said, finally conceding to her fate. She knew in her heart that she had always held a special place for Rarity, and now she could express it. This would be a Hearts and Hooves Day she would never forget.
Twilight said as she finished the scroll. She rolled it up tightly and found a place on the bookshelf to hide it. With a little giggle, she trotted out of the castle library to join her friends and prepared herself to hear the shocking news of Rarity and Applejack's sudden romance.